There are moments in life when you don't scream, you don't fight, you don't explain, you simply step back, you create distance, you choose quiet, you prioritize yourself, and that's all it takes for someone else to fall apart. Not because you betrayed them, not because there was cruelty, but because your presence, your availability, your existence in their life had become something far bigger than you realized. It wasn't love that held them together. It was you as structure, you as scaffolding, you as the silent stabilizer of a world they never fully built for themselves. When you step back, their panic feels overwhelming. Tears, rage, accusations, desperation. It seems like a hurricane erupted from a breeze. But the reaction isn't about you. It's about what you represented. In some relationships, especially the ones shaped in the unconscious layers of the psyche, you are never seen just as yourself. You are seen as a symbol, a psychological stand-in for something deeper, a role, a function. You may have been the protector, the listener, the calm in their storm, the ground beneath their emotional feet. And so, when you leave, what breaks is not just the connection, it's the illusion. The internal architecture built around your presence begins to collapse, because in their inner world, you weren't a person. You were a necessity, and when a necessity disappears, it feels like death. We like to believe our relationships are built on mutual care, respect, and conscious choice. But beneath that surface, many are built on unconscious arrangements. Emotional contracts no one ever agreed to out loud, but contracts nonetheless. Some people enter your life already searching for someone to fill a missing piece. They don't always realize it. They just feel a need, a pull, a longing. And when you appear kind, attentive, emotionally present, you slip silently into that vacant role. Without intending to, you become the part they've been missing. You become their certainty, their compass, their quiet relief from the noise of their own mind. But here's the truth. They were never relating to you. They were relating to the role you were unknowingly playing in their psyche. And when you begin to reclaim your individuality, when you ask for space, or draw a line, or simply change the fantasy cracks, the unconscious contract begins to unravel. And that's when things get loud. It's easy to feel guilty in these moments. When someone is devastated by your absence, it can seem like you must have done something wrong, that your boundaries were brutal, that your silence was a weapon. But often, the pain they feel isn't rooted in betrayal. It's rooted in loss of control, because your presence had become their emotional glue. And without that glue, the parts of them they never face, the fears, the insecurities, the unresolved wounds begin to rise to the surface. What they miss is not you as a person, but the emotional regulation you unknowingly provided. Your consistency, your energy, your role. They don't want you back because of who you are, they want you back to make the pain stop. It's not about love, it's about survival. Some bonds are not connections between two individuals, they are fusions, merged identities, silent agreements that one person will carry what the other refuses to face. In these dynamics, there is no real space for individuality. Your needs, your shifts, your natural growth, they're not seen as human. They're seen as betrayal. You become responsible for another's inner world. And the moment you act on your own behalf, you are accused of cruelty. This is emotional dependency dressed in romantic language. It sounds like, "How could you do this to me?" But what it really means is, "How dare you stop regulating my pain?" In a fused bond, separation is not a transition. It's an amputation. You were not just a partner. You were a psychic organ. And when you leave, the bleeding begins. There's a quiet truth no one wants to admit. Some people never learned to be alone. They never developed the internal scaffolding to hold themselves together in emotional storms. And so, they build externally. They construct their sense of self on the presence of others. It's not malicious. It's not evil. It's survival. But when someone builds their inner peace on your presence, you carry a burden you never agreed to hold. You become the emotional shield they stand behind. And if you ever step aside, even gently, the world comes crashing down on them. Not because you were cruel, but because you were the dam holding back the flood. Here's the dangerous part. When emotional dependency runs deep, control begins to wear the mask of love. They may say they care. They may say they just want to understand, but underneath the words is a demand. Return to your role, restore my stability. You are not being heard, you are being managed. They may cry or rage or blame. They may accuse you of being selfish, insensitive, cold, but all of it is designed consciously or not to pull you back into orbit, to re-establish the system. It's not about connecting. It's about restoring control. And if you go back, if you return out of guilt, the cycle continues until you are depleted, until you no longer recognize yourself. There comes a point where the most compassionate thing you can do for them and for yourself is to leave. To stop performing a role that is destroying you, to allow them, finally, to face their own reflection without your presence softening the image. This is not abandonment, this is honesty. This is the refusal to keep participating in a dynamic that keeps both people stuck, one in dependency, the other in self-denial. You are not responsible for how someone reacts to your authenticity. You are not the solution to a chaos that was never yours. When you walk away, what breaks is the mirror they used to see themselves. They may call it heartbreak, but often it is ego collapse. It is the undoing of an illusion. It is the exposure of wounds they have avoided since childhood. And sometimes, just sometimes, that collapse becomes the first step toward real healing. But only if they face it. Only if they stop blaming and start looking inward. And that, too, is not your responsibility. To become a whole person, you must be willing to be misunderstood. You must be willing to be seen as cold for choosing silence over reactivity. You must be willing to be called selfish for choosing peace over performance. Because people who depend on your compliance will always resent your freedom. They don't want you. They want the version of you that makes them comfortable. But your role is not to keep others comfortable. Your role is to become yourself, not the version they imagined, not the character they cast you to play, the real you. And if that causes certain bonds to break, then let them break. Because anything that can't survive your truth was never love, it was dependency. There's something liberating and terrifying about realizing that you were never the cause of their collapse. You were the container. You held space for what they refused to hold for themselves. You were the silence that calmed them, the ground beneath them, the mirror they needed to feel real. But you cannot exist forever as someone else's emotional infrastructure. You cannot keep sacrificing your own becoming to keep another from falling apart. And when you stop, when you withdraw, or change, or simply evolve, the fallout is not your fault. It is their reckoning. You cannot force someone to grow. You cannot drag them into wholeness. But by leaving, by stepping away from the symbolic role they placed you in, you may offer them something far greater than comfort. You may offer them the space to finally see themselves without the mask, without the mirror, without you as a substitute for what they've long avoided. That space is painful, but it is sacred. It is the space where transformation begins if they choose it. You are not a villain for choosing yourself. You are not cruel for seeking stillness. You are not broken for walking away. You are not selfish for refusing to be a crutch. You are becoming. You are peeling back the roles. You are shedding the projections. You are walking, step by step, back to your own soul. And yes, it costs you something. Yes, it's lonely at first. But nothing is lonelier than living your life as someone else's emotional solution. And nothing is more sacred than reclaiming your truth, even if it shatters illusions. even if it means letting go of people who never really saw you. Because the ones who will stay, the ones who will meet you, soul to soul, without needing to possess or control, they are still out there. But first, you have to meet yourself.